The Pacific Northwest, a region of ancient forests, mountains that pierce the clouds, and endless stretches of wilderness where cell phones don't work and compasses spin uselessly. It's a place where thousands of people vanish every year, where hikers disappear without a trace, and where park rangers refuse to work alone after dark. These 7 true stories from the darkest corners of the Pacific Northwest. Stories that come from official reports, ranger logs, and the testimonies of people who barely made it out alive. These aren't legends. These aren't campfire tales. These are documented accounts that law enforcement couldn't explain, and survivors couldn't forget. Story 1. The Whistler of Mount Rainier. In September 2019, a group of 5 experienced hikers set out on the Wonderland Trail that circles Mount Rainier. They were all in their 30s, all seasoned outdoors enthusiasts who'd completed dozens of major trails. They had permits, proper gear, satellite phones, and detailed itineraries filed with park rangers. What happened to them over the next 3 days would lead to a massive search operation and questions that remain unanswered. The group consisted of Marcus Chen, a software engineer from Seattle, his wife, Jennifer, their friends David and Laura Morrison, and Jennifer's brother, Kyle Patterson. They started their hike on September 12th at the Longmire entrance. The plan was to complete the 93-mile loop in 6 days, camping at designated sites along the way. The first day was normal. They hiked 11 miles, set up camp at Devil's Dream campsite, and settled in for the night around 8 p.m. That's when they heard the whistling. It started around 10 p.m. just as they were getting ready for sleep. A clear, melodic whistling that seemed to come from the forest about 50 yards from their camp. Not bird calls, not wind. A tune, an actual melody being whistled by something or someone in the pitch-black forest. Marcus called out, "Hello? Anyone there?" The whistling stopped. For about 30 seconds, there was silence. Then it started again, closer this time, maybe 30 yards away. The group sat in their tents, listening. The whistling was beautiful in a way that made it even more unsettling. It moved around their campsite in a slow circle, never getting closer than about 20 yards, never moving away. This continued for 6 hours. Every time it stopped, they thought it was over. Then it would start again, in a different location. David, who was a Marine veteran, finally grabbed his flashlight around 4 a.m. and swept a beam across the forest. Nothing. No eyes reflecting back. No movement. Just trees and darkness and that whistling that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The whistling stopped at dawn. The group packed up quickly, planning to hike to a different campsite despite their exhaustion. But as they were leaving, they found something that made their blood run cold. Arranged in a perfect circle around their camp, about 15 yards out, were stones. Hundreds of small stones, each about the size of a fist, placed deliberately in a ring around where they'd slept. None of them had heard anyone placing the stones. None of them had seen anything approach their camp, but someone or something had spent the night surrounding them with rocks while whistling from the darkness. They decided to continue the hike, reasoning that stopping would mean hiking back the way they came, and they'd already covered significant ground. That second night, they set up camp at Summerland, a more populated campsite where other hikers were present. They felt safer with other people around. But at 10 p.m. the whistling started again. This time other campers heard it too. A family of 4 in a nearby tent. 2 solo hikers. Everyone heard the same melody, circling the campsite, moving between the tents. A park ranger stationed at Summerland came out to investigate. She was a woman in her 50s named Rachel Torres who'd worked Mount Rainier for 20 years. She told the group this wasn't the first report of whistling. She'd heard it herself twice in her career. Both times, hikers had disappeared from the area within 24 hours. She radioed for additional rangers and recommended everyone pack up and hike out at first light. But hiking in darkness was more dangerous than staying put. So they waited for dawn. The whistling continued all night. At some point around 2 a.m., Kyle decided to record it on his phone. The recording would later become crucial evidence, though what it captured was impossible to explain. On the recording, you can hear the whistling clearly, but you can also hear something else underneath it. A voice, or rather, multiple voices, speaking in unison, so quietly that you have to turn the volume up completely to hear them. And when investigators did, they found the voices were speaking English, saying the same phrase over and over. Come to the trees, come to the trees, come to the trees. At dawn, the group packed frantically. But when they counted their number, they realized David was missing. His tent was open, his sleeping bag empty, his boots still inside. He'd vanished sometime in the night. And nobody had heard. No struggle, no cries for help, nothing. A massive search operation began immediately. Over 300 people, search dogs, helicopters. They found David's body 6 days later, 11 miles from the campsite, in an area so remote and steep that searchers couldn't understand how he'd gotten there in the dark, barefoot, without his gear. But it was the condition of his body that disturbed investigators most. David had no injuries consistent with a fall or animal attack, but his feet were shredded, covered in deep cuts as if he'd run for miles over rough terrain, and his expression, according to the medical examiner's report, showed signs of extreme terror. His face was frozen in what looked like a scream. The official cause of death was exposure and exhaustion, but no one could explain how he'd traveled 11 miles through impossible terrain in bare feet, in the dark, apparently running from something. The other 4 hikers refused to continue. They hiked out that day with a ranger escort. None of them have returned to Mount Rainier. Marcus Chen submitted his recording to multiple audio analysis labs. Every lab confirmed the same thing. There are voices under the whistling, saying come to the trees, but the voices don't match any human speech patterns. They're too synchronized, too identical. It's as if the same voice was speaking from multiple locations simultaneously. The recording is now part of an open investigation that park officials won't discuss publicly. Story 2. The Stairs in the Forest. 2017 park rangers across the Pacific Northwest have a protocol they don't tell the public about. If you find a staircase in the middle of the forest, standing alone with no building attached, you don't approach it. You don't photograph it. You mark the GPS coordinates, report it to your supervisor, and you walk away. This protocol exists because of incidents like what happened to Elena Martinez in Olympic National Forest in November 2017. Elena was a park ranger with 12 years of experience. She'd worked in 5 different national parks and considered herself unshakable. On November 8th, she was conducting a routine patrol in a remote section of the Quinault rainforest when she came across something that stopped her in her tracks. A staircase. Right in the middle of the forest, miles from any trail or structure. It was a nice staircase too. Red carpeted steps, oak railing, about 15 steps leading up to nothing. It looked like it had been pulled directly from someone's house and dropped in the forest. Elena knew the protocol about forest stairs. Every ranger in the Pacific Northwest knew about them. They appeared randomly, in places no stairs should logically be. No one knew who put them there or why, but rangers had learned through experience that bad things happen to people who messed with the stairs. Elena should have marked it and left, but she'd always thought the stairs thing was an urban legend. A prank played on new rangers to freak them out. So she decided to investigate. She photographed it from multiple angles. She examined the base, The stairs weren't attached to anything. They were just sitting on the forest floor, as if someone had carefully placed them there. The carpet was clean, dry, no moss or decay despite being in the middle of a rainforest where everything grows mold within weeks. Elena touched the railing. The wood was warm, not sun warm, but body warm, as if someone had just been holding it. She radioed her supervisor, described what she'd found, and asked for instructions. Her supervisor, a man named Roy Chen, responded immediately with urgency in his voice she'd never heard before. "Elena, walk away from it right now. Don't touch it again. Don't look at it. Just walk away and radio me 100 yards clear." But Elena was curious. She asked why. Roy's response was firm. Because the stairs mark something. Territory, maybe. A boundary. And when people interact with them, when they climb them, things follow them out of the forest. Now move. That's an order. Elena stepped back from the stairs. But as she did, she heard something. Footsteps on the stairs above her. The sound of someone descending wooden steps, even though she could clearly see nothing was there. The footsteps were heavy, measured, coming down slowly. Elena backed away, her hand on her radio. The footsteps reached the bottom of the stairs. Then they continued, walking on the forest floor, walking toward her. She couldn't see anything, but she could hear it. Heavy boots on dead leaves, crushing twigs, coming closer. Elena ran. She didn't follow the trail. She just ran in the opposite direction from the sound, crashing through underbrush, thorns tearing at her clothes. Behind her she could hear the footsteps following, matching her pace exactly. Not gaining, not falling behind, just following. She ran for 20 minutes before she had to stop, lungs burning, legs shaking. The footsteps stopped too. Complete silence. Elena stood there gasping, listening. Then the footsteps started again, from a different direction. To her right, she turned and ran again. This continued for 3 hours. Every time she stopped, the footsteps stopped. Every time she moved, they followed. They never got closer than about 20 feet, but they never fell behind either. Finally, exhausted and terrified, Elena climbed a tree. It was irrational, but she was out of options. She climbed about 15 feet up and wedged herself into a fork in the branches. The footsteps arrived at the base of her tree and stopped. For 2 hours, she sat in that tree, not moving, barely breathing. Below her, she could hear something breathing too. Slow, deep breaths that sounded wrong, like air being forced through a pipe that was too narrow. As the sun began to set, the breathing stopped. The forest went completely silent. Elena waited another hour before climbing down. Her radio battery was dead. Her phone had no signal. She was lost, with no idea which direction led back to her patrol vehicle. She picked a direction and walked. Around midnight, she stumbled onto a logging road and flagged down a truck. The driver was a logger heading home from a late shift. He took one look at her face and didn't ask questions, just drove her back to the ranger station. Elena submitted her report the next morning. She included the GPS coordinates of the stairs and detailed everything that happened. Her supervisor, Roy, read the report and made a phone call. The next day, 3 people Elena had never seen before arrived at the station. They wore Park Service uniforms but no name tags. They interviewed Elena for 4 hours, asking the same questions over and over. "Did anything touch you? Did you see anything besides the stairs? Did you take anything from the area? Did you climb the stairs?" Elena answered no to all of it. One of the unmarked rangers seemed relieved. "Good," he said. "Then it probably won't follow you home. Probably." That word stuck with Elena. 2 weeks later, she woke up at 3 a.m. to the sound of footsteps in her apartment. Heavy boots on her hardwood floor. Walking down her hallway toward her bedroom, she grabbed her phone and turned on the flashlight. Nothing there. but she could still hear the footsteps. They walked up to her bedroom door and stopped. Then they turned around and walked away, fading out as they moved back down the hall. This happened every night for a month, always at 3 a.m. Always the same pattern. Walk to her bedroom door, stop, walk away. Elena couldn't take it anymore. She quit her job, sold her apartment, and moved to Arizona. The footsteps didn't follow her there. She now works as a school teacher and refuses to go near any forest. She told this story to a journalist in 2020 on the condition of anonymity. When the journalist tried to verify the details with the Park Service, they claimed no such incident occurred, and no ranger named Elena Martinez had ever worked for Olympic National Forest. Her employment records, her reports, everything had been erased. Story 3. The 411 case of Sandra Jeffries. 2015. In June 2015, Sandra Jeffries and her 8-year-old daughter Emma went on a simple day hike in Gifford Pinchot National Forest. They never returned from what should have been a 3-mile trail to a waterfall. What happened became one of the most disturbing missing 411 cases ever documented. Sandra left detailed plans with her husband Mark, including trail info and photos of their clothing. She had full phone charge, GPS, supplies, everything. Emma was an experienced young hiker. They started at 9 a.m. on June 14th, and at 11 a.m., Sandra texted Mark a photo of Emma smiling on a rock. Everything was fine. At 6 p.m., when they hadn't returned, Mark called rangers. The search began immediately. By morning, over 100 volunteers, dogs, and helicopters searched. The trail was well marked, less than a mile from parking at its deepest point. Perfect weather, but Sandra and Emma had vanished. The search dogs acted strangely, following the scent for a quarter mile, then stopping abruptly, confused and whining. Multiple dogs refused to continue past the same point, as if the scent just ended mid-trail. 3 days in, a volunteer found Emma's shoe 2 miles off-trail in nearly impenetrable undergrowth, sitting upright on a rock. No mud, no scuffs, deliberately placed. But getting there would require crawling through brush, leaving obvious blood and damage. There was none. 6 days later, they found Emma alive under a tree, 3 miles from the shoe location, unharmed, not dehydrated, no scratches, no sunburn, wearing both shoes. The found shoe wasn't hers after all, despite matching perfectly. Emma couldn't explain where she'd been. "I was with Mom. Where is Mom?" "She's still there." "Where?" "With the others." She'd stopped talking then, staring at nothing. Psychologists found no trauma, no abuse. She was physically perfect, despite 6 days in wilderness. She looked like she'd returned from a comfortable camping trip. Sandra was never found. Emma slowly shared fragments in therapy. Her mom told her to follow the tall man into the trees. He wore a ranger uniform, but his face was wrong, like someone drew it but didn't know how faces work. He took them to a place with lots of people standing still in circles. They don't move, don't talk, eyes open but unseeing. No day or night there. Emma wasn't hungry or tired. Mom said to wait. Eventually, a nice woman led Emma back to the forest. When asked about Mom, Emma said, "She has to stay until it's someone else's turn." Mark Jeffries spent everything funding searches. Nothing. Sandra remains missing. Emma, now a teenager, refuses to enter forests. She told a family friend one thing never in official reports. There are others there. Lots of others. Standing in circles, waiting for their turn to leave. But most of them have been there so long they forgot they were supposed to leave. Story 4. The Cascade Killer. 2012. Between March and September of 2012, 8 hikers disappeared in the North Cascades National Park in Washington. All 8 vanished from different trails, on different days, with no apparent connection between them. The only commonality was that each person was hiking alone. Each had extensive outdoor experience, and each disappeared in the middle of the day, in good weather. The case became known as the Cascade Killer investigation, though no bodies were ever found, and no evidence of foul play was ever discovered. What made this case particularly disturbing was what happened to the last person who vanished, or rather, what he managed to record before he disappeared. Trevor Harrison was a 29-year-old wilderness guide who'd grown up hiking the Cascades. On September 15, 2012, he set out on the Sahale Arm Trail, a difficult but popular route. Trevor carried a GPS tracker that logged his location every 10 minutes and automatically uploaded to a cloud server. He also wore a GoPro camera attached to his chest harness, recording continuously. At 2:14 p.m., his GPS tracker showed him at the expected location on the trail. At 2:24 p.m., it showed him half a mile off trail, moving rapidly northeast into an area with no trails and extremely difficult terrain. At 2:34 p.m., his GPS signal stopped transmitting. When Trevor didn't return that evening, his brother accessed the cloud server and saw the GPS anomaly. Search and rescue teams were deployed immediately. They followed his GPS trail to the point where it ended, but found nothing. No signs of struggle, no dropped equipment, no tracks in the dirt. It was like he'd evaporated. But Trevor's GoPro had been uploading footage in real time to the same cloud server, and what it captured in those final 20 minutes would become the most analyzed video in Pacific Northwest search and rescue history. The footage starts normally, Trevor hiking, occasionally narrating for the camera, pointing out landmarks. At 2:13 p.m., he stops suddenly and says, "That's weird." He's looking at something off to his right, off trail. The camera doesn't show what he's seeing clearly, just trees and undergrowth. Trevor says, "Is someone out there?" No response on the audio. Trevor takes a few steps off the trail, pushing through brush. He says, "Hello? You okay?" Then he stops again. On the audio, you can hear him breathing faster. What the hell? Trevor starts moving quickly now, no longer on any trail, pushing through dense forest. The camera jostles with his movement, making it hard to see details, but you can hear his breathing, increasingly rapid. He's not speaking anymore. At 2:18 p.m., he's moving at what appears to be a full run, crashing through underbrush, branches slapping the camera lens. Then, at 2:22 p.m., he stops abruptly and says one word. "No." The camera is pointing at the ground, showing Trevor's boots in disturbed leaves. But the audio continues. Trevor is crying, a grown man, an experienced wilderness guide, sobbing uncontrollably. Between sobs, he says, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know." Sorry to whom? For what? Then he screams, a raw, terrified scream that lasts 7 seconds before cutting off suddenly, as if his voice was physically shut off mid-sound. The camera continues recording for 12 more minutes, pointed at the ground, capturing only audio. There are sounds of movement, heavy breathing that doesn't sound human, and something else. Music. Faint, distant music that sounds like wind chimes mixed with voices singing in a language no linguist has been able to identify. At 2:34 p.m., the video goes dark, but audio continues for 30 more seconds. The last sound recorded is a whisper, very close to the microphone, saying in Trevor's voice, "Don't look for me." Then silence. The GPS stopped transmitting at exactly that moment. Law enforcement analyzed the video frame by frame. In the final seconds before Trevor says no, there are 3 frames where something is visible at the edge of the screen. The image is unclear, distorted by movement and low light under the forest canopy, but it appears to be a human figure standing unnaturally still. The figure is tall, impossibly tall, perhaps 7 or 8 feet. Multiple analysts have tried to enhance these frames, but the image becomes more distorted the more it's processed, as if the figure is somehow resistant to being photographed clearly. The investigation into the 8 disappearances went nowhere. The FBI got involved, created profiles, analyzed patterns, and found nothing. The disappearances stopped after Trevor vanished. To this day, not one of the 8 has been found, alive or dead. The case remains open but inactive. Trevor's family filed a lawsuit to have the full video released to the public, but a judge ruled that it should remain sealed due to its disturbing nature and potential to cause psychological harm to viewers. The brief excerpt that was released at trial was enough to cause 2 jurors to request replacement. Trevor's brother Cole has never stopped searching. He goes into the North Cascades several times a year, always following the GPS trail to where it ended, always hoping to find something the official searches missed. In 2018, he found something that convinced him his brother was dead, though it wasn't Trevor's body. It was a shoe. One hiking boot, the exact brand and size Trevor wore, sitting upright on a rock in the middle of nowhere. The boot was weathered, clearly had been exposed to elements for years, but inside the boot was a piece of paper, protected from the weather. On the paper was a message in Trevor's handwriting. "They showed me everyone, all of the people who are gone. They're dead. They're somewhere else, and they're all standing in a circle, waiting." Story 5. The Aberdeen Incident. 2018. In October 2018, the entire night shift at an Aberdeen, Washington fire station responded to what dispatch described as a structure fire in the woods. What they found wasn't a structure at all, and what happened to them during their response would result in the fire station being permanently closed, and all 4 responding firefighters taking medical retirement before the age of 40. This is what their official report said happened, compiled from 4 separate witness statements that corroborated each other in every detail. The call came in at 11:47 p.m. on October 23rd. A hunter reported seeing what looked like a building on fire deep in the forest about 3 miles east of Aberdeen city limits. He'd been driving on a logging road and saw the orange glow through the trees. The dispatcher couldn't find any registered structures at the location the hunter described, but sent Engine 7 to investigate anyway. On Engine 7 were 4 firefighters. Captain Dennis O'Malley, age 37, with 15 years of experience. Engineer Lisa Chen, age 31. Firefighter Mark Watkins, age 28. And probationary firefighter Sarah Martinez, age 22. They drove to the approximate location, parked on the logging road, and hiked in with flashlights and portable radios. About a quarter mile into the forest, they saw the glow the hunter had reported. It looked like firelight, orange and flickering, visible through the trees ahead. But as they got closer, they realized something was wrong. There was no smoke, no smell of burning wood, no heat. Fire produces a tremendous amount of heat that you can feel from hundreds of feet away. They felt nothing. They approached cautiously and found the source of the light. It wasn't a fire. It was a clearing roughly circular, about 30 feet across. The ground in the clearing was glowing, not reflecting light, but emitting it, as if the earth itself was producing orange light that pulsed slowly, like breathing. In the center of the clearing stood 7 figures. They appeared to be people, standing completely still in a circle, facing inward. The firefighters called out to them. No response. The figures didn't move, didn't acknowledge their presence. Captain O'Malley approached the edge of the clearing and called out again. Nothing. He radioed dispatch and requested police backup, describing what they were seeing. The dispatcher confirmed no missing persons in the area, and no structures at that location. O'Malley decided to enter the clearing and check on the figures, thinking they might be injured or in some kind of trouble. The moment his boot touched the glowing ground, all 7 figures turned their heads in unison and looked directly at him. O'Malley froze. In his statement, He described the faces as wrong in every way possible. They had the general features of human faces, but the proportions were off. The expressions were off. Everything about them was slightly incorrect, like a child's drawing of a person. The figure said nothing, just stared at O'Malley with wide, unblinking eyes. Then they started to walk toward him, moving in perfect synchronization, their steps matching exactly. O'Malley backed out of the clearing quickly. The figure stopped at the edge as if an invisible barrier prevented them from leaving. They stood there, still staring, still perfectly synchronized. The firefighters regrouped, and Lisa Chen made the decision to document what they were seeing. She pulled out her phone and started recording. The video, which would later be analyzed by multiple experts, shows exactly what the firefighters described: the glowing ground, the 7 figures, their unnatural movement. But the video also shows something the firefighters didn't notice at the time. In the background, behind the standing figures, there are more people. Dozens of them, maybe more than 100. They're standing further back in the darkness beyond the glow. Barely visible, but they're there. And they're all ranged in circles. Multiple circles of standing figures, all facing inward, all perfectly still. When Lisa panned her camera across the clearing, the count of figures kept increasing. The more she looked, the more appeared in the darkness, as if they were materializing as she watched. The firefighters decided this was beyond their scope. This wasn't a fire. This wasn't a medical emergency. This was something else. Something that required police, or maybe federal authorities. They backed away from the clearing, maintaining visual contact with the figures, and hiked back to their engine. But when they got there, they found their engine was gone. The logging road was empty. Their vehicle had vanished. They radioed dispatch. The dispatcher confirmed the engine was still showing on GPS at their location, but the firefighters were standing right where it should be, and it wasn't there. Then things got worse. Behind them, back in the direction of the clearing, they heard footsteps. Many footsteps, dozens of them, moving through the forest toward them. The firefighters ran. They ran down the logging road away from the sounds, staying together, calling for help on their radios. Dispatch could hear them but couldn't send help because they didn't know where the firefighters actually were. The GPS said they were with their engine, but clearly they weren't. The footsteps followed them for 30 minutes as they ran down the dark logging road. Then the footsteps stopped. Complete silence. The firefighters kept running. They emerged onto a paved highway around 2 a.m., 3 hours after they'd entered the forest. A passing truck driver saw them and stopped. They were 3 miles from where they'd parked. The truck driver let them use his phone. When they called their fire chief, he was confused. He said Engine 7 had radioed in 30 minutes ago, saying they'd investigated and found nothing, and they were back in quarters. The firefighters insisted that wasn't true. They were still out here, but when the chief checked, Engine 7 was indeed parked at the station. The captain who'd supposedly radioed in, Dennis O'Malley, but the real Dennis O'Malley was standing on the highway, talking on a truck driver's phone. The chief and 2 other units drove out to pick them up. When they got back to the station, they found Engine 7 parked normally. The mileage matched a trip to the location and back. The engine was cold, as if it had been parked for a while. But the 4 firefighters had been missing for hours. They all submitted incident reports. They all told the same story. They all described the same clearing, the same figures, the same events. Lisa Chen's phone video corroborated everything. An investigation was launched. Federal agents got involved. They searched the forest area extensively. They found the clearing. The ground was scorched in a perfect circle, as if exposed to extreme heat, but all the surrounding vegetation was untouched. There were no footprints, no evidence of the figures the firefighters described. But there was one thing. In the center of the clearing, partially buried, They found a firefighter's helmet. It was Dennis O'Malley's helmet, identified by the ID number inside. But O'Malley was wearing his helmet when they returned to the station that night. He had two helmets now, one on his head, one buried in the clearing. All four firefighters were placed on medical leave. They underwent psychological evaluations, drug testing, neurological examinations. Everything came back normal. They weren't lying. They weren't hallucinating. They hadn't been drugged. They'd experienced exactly what they reported. 3 months later, all four took medical retirement. The fire station where they worked was closed permanently, officially due to budgetary constraints. But everyone knew why. Whatever happened that night, whoever or whatever those figures were, the city didn't want its firefighters anywhere near that forest again. Story 6. The Vanishing Cabin. I 16. There's a Willamette National Forest in Oregon. It shows up for a few hours, sometimes a few days, then disappears. Some have even gone inside. But every person who's entered that cabin has either disappeared or come out changed in ways they can't articulate. In August 2016, a documentary film crew tried to investigate the cabin. They managed to get footage inside before they fled. The footage has never been publicly released, but portions were leaked online before being systematically scrubbed from every platform. This is what that footage showed according to people who saw it. The film crew consisted of 4 people. Director James Mitchell, age 40. Cinematographer Kelly Santos, age 35. Sound technician David Marsh, age 32. And investigative journalist Rachel Kim, age 29. They'd been researching the cabin phenomenon for 6 months, interviewing rangers, hikers, and locals. They'd compiled dozens of reports spanning 40 years describing the same thing: a cabin that appears and disappears randomly in the forest, always in the same general area, but never in the exact same spot. The cabin was always described identically. Small, maybe 20 feet square. Wood construction, weathered gray. A single door, no windows. A stone chimney on one side. Never smoking. It looked old but well maintained, as if someone lived there and took care of it. But no one did. Rangers had searched the area extensively. No cabin existed in any records. No structure had ever been legally built there. And yet dozens of people had seen it and even photographed it. On August 12, 2016, the crew got lucky. A ranger radioed that the cabin had appeared. They rushed to the location and found it exactly as described. Kelly started filming immediately. The cabin sat in a small clearing, surrounded by a dense forest. It looked perfectly normal, except for one detail that the camera captured clearly. The cabin cast no shadow. It was midday, sunny, and every tree, rock, and plant cast distinct shadows. But the cabin didn't. It sat in the clearing as if exempt from the laws of light. James approached the door first. Before touching it, he called out, "Hello? Anyone home?" No response. He tried the door handle. It opened easily, swinging inward without creaking. Dark inside. James turned on his flashlight and stepped through the doorway. Kelly followed, camera rolling. David came next with the boom mic. Rachel stayed outside, taking photos of the exterior and keeping watch. The interior of the cabin was bigger than the exterior suggested. Much bigger. James commented on this immediately. From outside, the cabin was maybe 20 feet square. Inside, it stretched at least 50 feet in every direction, with a ceiling that rose into darkness beyond the reach of their flashlights. The floor was packed dirt. The walls were bare wood, covered in symbols that looked like a mix of Native American petroglyphs, mathematical equations, and something else entirely. Symbols that hurt to look at, that seemed to shift and change when viewed peripherally. In the center of the single large room was a circle, not drawn or carved, but made of what looked like bones. Human bones arranged in a perfect circle about 10 feet in diameter. Inside the circle were personal items, wallets, keys, watches, phones, backpacks, all arranged neatly, as if on display. Kelly zoomed in on one backpack and gasped. She recognized it. It belonged to a hiker named Michael Chen who disappeared in this forest in 2014. The case was still unsolved. David moved the boom mic across the space, recording ambient sound. Later analysis of the audio revealed something that wasn't audible to the crew at the time. Underneath the normal forest sounds, there was whispering, hundreds of voices, all whispering in unison, saying the same phrase over and over. Leave your name. Join the circle. Wait your turn. The phrase repeated continuously for the entire time they were inside. James approached the circle of bones, examining the items inside. He counted 43 backpacks, purses, or bags, each one likely representing a person who'd entered this cabin and never left. He was about to say something when Rachel screamed from outside. The crew ran to the door. Rachel was backing away from the cabin, pointing. All around the clearing, figures had appeared, dozens of them. They stood between the trees, perfectly still, watching. They wore modern clothes, hiking gear. Some had ranger uniforms. All looked like normal people, but they stood with an unnatural stillness, not breathing, not blinking, just watching. Kelly kept filming. The figures didn't move or speak. They just stood there in the tree line, forming a complete circle around the cabin. James made the decision to leave immediately. The crew exited the cabin quickly, bunching together, planning to walk through the line of figures to get back to the trail. But as they approached the figures, one of them spoke, a woman's voice, flat and emotionless. "You can't take the images with you." Kelly tightened her grip on the camera. James said, "We're just leaving. We don't want any trouble." The woman spoke again. "You can't take the images with you. Put the devices in the circle. Join the circle. Wait your turn." The figures all took one step forward in perfect unison. Another voice spoke, male this time, same flat tone. "Put the devices in the circle." The crew ran. They charged through the line of figures, expecting to be grabbed or stopped. But the figures simply parted, letting them through. The crew crashed through the forest, running toward their parked vehicle a mile away. Behind them, they could hear footsteps. Multiple sets of footsteps, not running, just walking steadily, following them. They made it to their car, threw the equipment in, and drove away at dangerous speed down the forest road. They'd barely made it a mile when the car started experiencing electrical problems. The radio turned on by itself, cycling through stations, none of them playing recognizable music or speech. The GPS showed them driving in circles, even though they were on a straight road. Kelly's camera, which had been working perfectly, suddenly showed corrupted video, the footage breaking up into static. She checked the other cameras. Same thing. All the footage they'd shot inside the cabin was corrupted. Unwatchable. Except for a few seconds. A few seconds that showed something they hadn't seen while filming. In the footage, visible for just a moment, there's a figure standing in the corner of the cabin. A figure they hadn't seen when they were there. The figure is looking directly at the camera. Its face is wrong. Distorted. Like a reflection in warped glass. And superimposed over its chest, visible through its body as if it's semi-transparent, is a name tag. A ranger's name tag. The name is Michael Chen, the hiker who disappeared in 2014, whose backpack was in the circle. The crew drove straight to the ranger station and reported what they'd seen. Rangers hiked out to the location immediately. The cabin was gone, no trace of it. The clearing was there, but the cabin had vanished. A search of the area found nothing except one disturbing detail. The ground in the clearing was covered in footprints, hundreds of them, all appearing to be from different people, all leading into the center of the clearing where the cabin had been, none leading back out. The crew's footage was confiscated by authorities. They were told not to discuss what they'd seen. The documentary was never completed. James Mitchell sold his production company and now works in corporate video production in California. Kelly Santos quit filmmaking entirely and works as an accountant. David Marsh moved to Japan and refuses to discuss the incident. Rachel Kim continued journalism, but specializes in political coverage, never nature or wilderness topics. When asked why, she said, "Because forests remember, and they don't forgive people who take what doesn't belong to them." Story 7. The Sound in the Woods. 2020. The most recent incident on this list occurred in June 2020 during the pandemic lockdowns. A family of 4 decided to escape the city for a camping trip in the Siuslaw National Forest on the Oregon coast. They chose a remote campsite, far from other campers, wanting isolation and peace. What they experienced over 3 nights would lead to a 911 call, so disturbing that the recording was flagged by multiple agencies, and the family was placed under protective observation for 2 weeks. This is what they reported, and what the 911 recording captured. The family was Mark and Jennifer Walsh, both 38, and their 2 children, Chloe, age 12, and Tyler, age 9. They arrived at their campsite on June 5 around 4 p.m. The site was in a small clearing surrounded by dense coastal forest, with the nearest neighboring campsite over a mile away. They set up their tent, built a fire, and had a normal evening. The children played. The parents relaxed. Everything was perfect. The problems started the first night. Around midnight, Mark woke up to a sound outside the tent. At first, he thought it was an animal. Bears were common in the area, and making noise was the standard procedure. He called out loudly, "Hey, get out of here!" The sound stopped, but then he heard something else, a voice, a child's voice, small and scared, calling out, "Mommy, where are you? I'm lost." Mark unzipped the tent and shone his flashlight outside. Nothing. Empty clearing, dying fire, dark forest. The voice called out again, "Please help me. I can't find my mommy." Mark woke Jennifer. They both heard it. A child somewhere in the forest, crying for help. Mark's father instinct kicked in. He grabbed his flashlight and started to leave the tent to search for the child. But Jennifer stopped him. Something felt wrong. The voice was off. It sounded like a recording, too perfect, each cry exactly the same. And what child would be out in the middle of nowhere at midnight? Mark decided to call for help instead of going into the forest. He tried his phone, no signal. They were too remote. The crying continued for an hour. "Mommy, where are you? I'm lost. I'm lost. Please help me. I'm scared." Same phrases, same intonation, over and over. Then it stopped. Silence for the rest of the night. In the morning, they discussed leaving. But in daylight, everything seemed normal and safe. They'd driven 6 hours to get there. The kids were having fun. They decided to stay but agreed to leave if anything else happened. The second night, the sound returned. But it wasn't a crying child this time. It was Jennifer's voice. Jennifer was inside the tent, next to Mark, holding his hand because they were both frightened. But outside the tent, they heard Jennifer's voice saying, "Mark, where did you go? Mark, I can't find the kids. Mark." It was perfectly replicated. Her voice, her cadence, her way of speaking. Mark squeezed her hand. Jennifer squeezed back, eyes wide with terror. The voice outside kept calling, "Mark, are you out there? The kids are gone. I need help." Their children woke up. Chloe understood immediately that something was wrong and stayed quiet. But Tyler, 9 years old and confused, called out, "Mom's right here." The voice outside stopped immediately. Complete silence. Then they heard movement, footsteps circling their tent. Not the heavy footsteps of a bear or deer. Soft, human footsteps walking around their tent in a slow circle. This continued for 10 minutes. Jennifer whispered to Mark, "Call 911. Right now. I don't care if we don't have signal." Mark tried. No signal. The footsteps stopped. They huddled together in their tent for the rest of the night, not speaking, barely breathing, listening. No more sounds came. At first light, they started packing immediately. They were leaving, no discussion. But as they were taking down the tent, Chloe said, "Dad, what's that?" She pointed to the tree line at the edge of their clearing. People were standing there, 7 of them. Adults and children. Standing perfectly still, watching. They wore normal clothes. They looked like campers or hikers. But they stood with absolute stillness, not moving, not speaking. Just watching. Mark called out, "Can we help you?" No response. Jennifer said, "We're just leaving. We don't want any trouble." No response. The figures just stood there, watching. The family finished packing quickly, loaded their car, and prepared to leave. As they got in the car, all 7 figures took one step forward in perfect unison. Then they stopped. Tyler started crying. Mark started the engine and drove away. In the rearview mirror, he watched the figures. They didn't follow. They just stood at the edge of the clearing, watching the car disappear down the forest road. About 5 miles from the campsite, Jennifer's phone found signal. She immediately called 911. The operator answered, and Jennifer frantically explained what had happened. The operator asked them to pull over, said deputies were on the way to meet them. But then Jennifer's voice on the 911 recording changed. She started repeating, "We're fine, we're fine. False alarm. Sorry." But Mark, who was driving, said Jennifer was still talking, still explaining what happened. There were 2 Jennifers, one speaking on the phone, one speaking in the car. The operator heard one voice, Mark heard a different one. The call recording becomes chaotic. The operator is confused because the voice on the phone is calmly saying everything's fine. False alarm. They're going home. But in the background, you can hear the real Jennifer still frantically trying to explain. And then you hear something else. A third voice, a child's voice, saying, "Mommy, where are you? I'm lost." It's coming from inside the car, but both of their children are silent, too terrified to speak. The 911 call ends abruptly. The family drove straight to the nearest town and went directly to the police station. They refused to return to the campsite. Deputies were sent to investigate. They found the campsite empty. Everything looked normal, but they found footprints. Hundreds of footprints circling where the tent had been, like multiple people had walked in circles around it all night. The deputies also reported hearing sounds from the forest. A child crying, a woman calling for help. But when they searched, they found no one. The family was debriefed by multiple agencies. Their phone was analyzed. The 911 recording was studied by audio experts. Everyone confirmed the same thing. There were multiple voices on that call that shouldn't have been there, speaking words the family never said. The family now lives in Portland and refuses to go into any forest, any wilderness, anywhere more than a mile from the city. Jennifer told a reporter 6 months later, "Whatever is out there can copy us. It can take our voices, our faces, use them as lures. And I think it's been doing this for a very long time. All those missing people, I think some of them are still out there, but they're not people anymore. There's something else, standing in the trees, waiting, watching, learning how to be more convincing. These 7 stories represent only a fraction of the documented incidents from the Pacific Northwest forests. Every year, thousands of people report strange encounters. Most are explained away as misidentifications, stress, or natural phenomena. But some cases, like these 7, resist explanation. They come from credible witnesses, often multiple witnesses, often with physical evidence or recordings, and they all share common elements. Strange sounds, impossible disappearances, figures standing unnaturally still, and the feeling that something in those forests is watching, learning, and waiting. The Pacific Northwest remains one of the most mysterious regions in North America. Its forests are older than human civilization. They were here before us, and they'll be here after. And in that time, something has learned to live in them, something that understands human nature just well enough to use it against us. If you find yourself in those forests, follow the ranger's rules. Stay on marked trails. Don't hike alone. If you hear someone calling for help, be certain it's actually human before you respond. And if you see people standing still in the trees, watching you, don't acknowledge them. Don't speak to them. Just leave, because they're waiting for you to interact, to engage, to give them permission to follow you home. And once they follow, they never stop.